A few years ago, in 2011, I was home on break from college. I decided to go to Kohl's to pick out some new jeans before the semester started. As I was coming out of the dressing room, I stopped for a moment to text my friend about our plans for that night. As I was standing there, I began to pick up on a conversation around the corner between a man and a young boy. I wasn't paying attention enough to hear what was said before it, but I remember him saying, "Just across the street. We'll be back before your daddy even notices, I promise." I froze in my spot immediately when I heard that. I thought about calling someone, but the realization came that this could be something bad happening right now, and if it's just a misunderstanding, it just caused a lot of embarrassment to call the police. I gathered myself up and walked out to see a man walking away with a young boy towards the entrance of the store. He seemed to be in his late 40s, early 50s. Pretty well dressed and clean with some scruff. I power walked to catch up to them and asked the man, "Excuse me, is this your son?" He replied, "Oh, this is my nephew, actually." I had a rush of relief come over me, but I still wanted to make sure, so I asked the boy, "Is this your uncle?" He replied, "No, he said we," and before he could finish, the man turned and briskly started to walk out of the store at a pace almost impressive for a walk. I started thinking, oh my God, and didn't really know what to do, but there was no one else around to see this happening, and I'm left with a confused little boy, so I figured I should help him find his dad. I've never been in a situation like this before, and I'm not the best with kids, but I tried to be as positive and non-freaked out as I could as I walked him to where his dad might be. We walked back to the dressing room, but it was empty, so I figured he'd left to look for his son. We walked around the store for a little bit, and as we were, he asked me who that man was. I said, I'm not sure. I think he just wanted someone to hang out with. He didn't seem fazed by the situation for the most part, but did look a little worried now, like he might have realized what was going on. After a few minutes, I heard a voice behind me yell the boy's name. I turned around and asked him, "Is that your dad?" And he replied, "Yeah." The father walked over to us with a "what the hell are you doing" face to me, and grabbed the boy's arm, bringing him to his side. He asked me, "Who are you?" And I asked if I could talk to him for a moment, gesturing away from the boy so we couldn't hear. I explained the situation to him and gave him a description of the man. He turned to his son and asked him if another man tried to bring him somewhere, and the boy responded, "Yeah, this other guy was gonna get us ice cream." There was an ice cream place right across the freeway. He developed a strong look of frustration and anger on his face, but simply thanked me, and I went on my way. I didn't see any police cars or security show up by the time I left, so I'm not sure if I should have stayed in case he called them. But I was pretty shaken up by the incident and couldn't wait to get home. Although originally from Scotland, I was living in the Netherlands at the time with my uncle, who had taken a chemical engineering job in Breda, a small Dutch city located near the Dutch-Belgian border. We stayed in Lesbos on the very outskirts of Breda, a heavily forested area with sporadic housing and street lighting, and little human activity minus the occasional encounter with those from the nearby retirement home. I loved how picturesque and tranquil the area was, and would stroll through the surrounding woodland on a regular basis. I would regularly take the train from Roosendaal over the border to Belgium, as I had friends studying there at the time, something that I did on the day in question. As I had had quite a few drinks in the afternoon with my friends, I inadvertently missed the 5 o'clock train from Brussels to Roosendaal, with the next one at 8:30. Now, in such circumstances, I would have usually stayed with friends, as the 8:30 train meant I would most probably have missed the last bus to Lesbos by the time I got back to Breda. Nevertheless, I decided to risk it as I had to meet people early the next day. After a fairly nondescript journey back, to my surprise, there was the 112 to Udgostal sitting in the train station parking lot, 10 minutes after it should have departed around 11:45. Some 25 minutes later, the bus approached the stop for Lesbos, and after getting off, I was greeted by the familiar darkness and quietude of the surrounding woodland. I approached the U-bend walkway that was on the way to my uncle's house and went under the above motorway. This time, though, I could see, for the first time, that the tunnel light was out and as a result was pitch dark, and due to its shape, impossible to see the exit until at least 2/3 of the way through it. When I got to the entrance, I heard what sounded like someone or something at the exit or in the darkness of that far side of the tunnel. However, not wanting to walk over the motorway, nor take a much longer alternate route, I naively convinced myself it was nothing, and proceeded to walk through the darkness to the other side. I had no battery left on my phone after a full day's usage of listening to music on the train, etc. I felt somewhat relieved when I got near to the end, but this sense of relief was soon to become one of true terror. As I drew even closer to the end, I noticed an unkempt man with a bicycle staring at me, his figure partially illuminated by the street light on the other side of the tunnel. This freaked me out a lot, but deciding it was too late to go back, I continued forward. As I approached the man, I noticed his expressionless face, gaunt features, sharp, piercing dark eyes. In an attempt to act relaxed, I said, "Goeden Navid," even though it was now morning. He said nothing and began to stare more intently, following me with his piercing eyes until I was finally beyond him. I was freaking out inside, but I tried to remain calm and kept walking. I turned around some 10 seconds later to find he was still staring at me. I kept walking, turned around again, and he was still staring at me. I turned around again some 15 seconds after the second time. Only now he was cycling towards me at a pace with what looked like a large metal instrument in his hand. Possibly a large knife of some kind, but I did not know for sure. In sheer panic, knowing he would catch up with me before I could get to a nearby property and raise the alarm, I darted towards a nearby bus stop which provided access to the motorway. I desperately ran up to the motorway, trying to flag down a car, but bar two drivers beeping their horn in anger, nobody stopped. Thus, blinded by fear, I hid in a bush above the postbahn, not even knowing if he saw me take cover there. I sat there for around 2 minutes, looking down onto the postbahn, which led to the side I would have run to if I had crossed the motorway. When I saw him cycle past, heading to the other side of the motorway. At this point, I should have made a run for it, but paralyzed by fear to the point of pure petrification, I remained in the bush. Then, to my horror, I saw him cycle back under the postbahn underpass some moments later, and at this point knew he was looking as intently as possible to find me. For what seemed like an eternity, I hid, praying I would not be discovered. Dawn began to break, and having not seen the guy since he cycled back through the underpass, I emerged from the bush and made a dash, the fastest I ever have, to my uncle's house nearby. I live on a fairly quiet road in the countryside in England. My mom works nights, and it's just me and her and my small dog. I'm about 5'4" and look about 15. Also, I'm female. It was a dark Wednesday night, around 10 o'clock at night, and I just got back from babysitting. I couldn't be bothered to cook, so I decided I'd order pizza. I ordered the pizza online. About 20 minutes later, the door goes, and I open it. It was the pizza delivery man. He was about 6 foot tall, bald, and around 45, maybe 50 at a push. I smile and say thank you, and go to take my pizza from him. As I go to reach for my pizza, the man, instead of handing me the pizza, takes a step back so that the box is out of my reach. "Hi, my name's Danny," he said. Instantly, I could tell something was off about Danny. I couldn't put my finger on why, but he gave me the creeps. At this point, I just really wanted my pizza. It had been a long night, and I wasn't in the mood for chit-chat. But not wanting to be rude, I replied, "Hi, Danny." Danny then smiled and said, "Do you want to save money on your gas and heating?" I had no idea what to reply, so I said, "I guess so." Danny then pulled out a bunch of leaflets from his back pocket. He really did seem very happy at this point and said, "Brilliant. Well, I'll come over sometime and we can have a chat about some deals. My number's written on the back of these leaflets, so give me a call." I really didn't know what to say at this point, so I just nodded and took the leaflets from him. Danny then hands me my pizza, gives me a massive smile, and says, "Okay then, I'll see you very soon." At this point, I was pretty creeped out and just shut the door as quickly as I could. I shoved the leaflets on the side and didn't think any more about Danny. I was just about to lock up and go to bed. It was around 11:30, and my dog starts going mental at the front door. My front door has a large panel of frosted glass, so as I was walking towards the door to check out why my dog was going mental, I could see someone was standing at my front door. As I approached the front door, I shouted out, "Hello?" I was pretty nervous at this point because I knew it wouldn't be my mom coming home, and I couldn't think of anyone else it could be. I called out hello again. This time, I was much closer to the door, and I could see through the frosted glass. The figure was much taller than me. I called out hello for the third time, and as I was reaching to open the door, the figure turned and ran off down the pathway from my house. I thought about opening the door, but I was kind of scared, so I decided against it. I went to bed and didn't think about it anymore, or Danny. Around 3.5 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was around 11 o'clock in the morning, and I was just getting ready to go to work. I work at a nursery. I checked the text, and it read, "Put the kettle on. I'll be around in 10. I replied saying, "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number." I instantly received a text back saying, "No, I don't. It's me, Danny. I want to talk about my business deals with you." I nearly dropped my phone. I was so scared. I was home alone yet again and didn't know what to do. I called my dad and told him the current situation. He told me to give him Danny's number and he would call Danny and tell him to leave me alone, then call me back. I gave my dad Danny's number and waited for him to call me. My dad called me back after 10 minutes and told me that he had spoke to Danny, and the conversation went like this. Danny said hello. My dad said, "Hello, is that Danny speaking?" Danny said, "Yes. How can I help you?" My dad said, "My daughter has just called me saying you've texted her to put the kettle on. She's not interested in whatever you're trying to sell her, and I'd appreciate it if you deleted her number." Danny said, "Well, I haven't just texted your daughter. I sent a group text to a number of my business contacts." My dad said, "If you've sent a group text to a number of people, how do you know who my daughter is?" Danny, "I won't text her again." My dad, "How did you get her number?" Danny hangs up. My dad said he had tried to call Danny back, but that he had been putting the phone down on him. I felt a little bit better and carried on getting ready for work. My dad told me to call him back if Danny texted me again. Around 5 minutes later, my dad called me back, saying Danny had called him back. Danny had told my dad that he knew I worked at a nursery and did babysitting on the side. He told my dad that he had gotten my number off of a babysitting website. My dad asked Danny how he knew that I went babysitting, and Danny had told my dad that I had told him. This was, of course, a complete lie. I told my dad this, and he tried to call Danny back, but he didn't pick up again. My dad assured me that he has firmly told Danny to leave me alone, and hopefully I wouldn't hear from him again. It's been a week, and so far I haven't heard anything from him. I did think about contacting the pizza company he works for, but decided against it, as I didn't want to make him lose his job, as he does know where I live. The weekend after my 24th birthday, I went on a blind date that ended atrociously, as the person I met smelled like a skunk and was a liar. That's not the scary part, though. I bought a ticket for my date and myself, but the movie didn't start for another 45 minutes, so I just waited in the theater lobby until she would show up. I was on the far left corner of the bench when a large, burly man walked up to the bench and sat directly next to me. "Hi," he said. As a slightly awkward guy, I sheepishly said, "Hi," back. The man smiled, opened up his coat, reached in, and pulled out a package of salami. "This is the best motherfucking salami. You want to buy some?" he asked. "No thanks, I'm full," I said. He raised his eyebrows and put the salami back in his coat. In the same movement, however, he pulled out a package of cheese. "And this cheese, you want to buy some goddamn good pepper jack?" He leaned towards me with his question. "No, I'm afraid not." He sighed, put the cheese back in his coat, and zipped it up. The man was silent for the next 5 minutes, but my heart was pounding from being uncomfortable. The man finally relented and nudged me. He pointed at the poster for Mockingjay. "That's a fine-ass logo," he smirked. I looked at the poster. "It's pretty cool, isn't it?" I forced myself to say. "I'm a tattoo artist. I gotta put it on someone." "Maybe you." "Yeah, I'd love to ink your canvas. I mean, you're well built. One could do wonders with your skin." I went wide-eyed in dismay at how creepy this guy was. I couldn't even respond at this point. "I'm also a musician. I bet you have great vocal cords. I'd love to audition you." He smiled at me. "Maybe another time, man. I'm meeting my date any second now," I said. "Is she hot?" he said, his tone deeper and more serious. "I don't know. We'll see." "Well, lucky her," he said, reached out and stroked my hairline, and ran his finger through my admittedly long hair. Lucky her. I sprang to my feet and stomped out of the theater. "Ah, come on, man, you can't just leave me like—" He shouted after me when the theater usher stomped up to him and yelled at him to leave. After a few minutes, I re-entered the theater, and the creep was nowhere to be seen. I can handle myself, but I felt violated by the whole incident. This encounter happened to me a while ago. I couldn't share it for a long time. For some background, I live in the country in Ohio. Down a long drive, fields on 2 sides, woods in the back. I'm about a mile away from town, so if I need the police, I have to call the sheriff. I live with my husband and a boxer. The night this happened, my husband was getting in some overtime at the factory he worked at. It was a Saturday, and he was working 3rd shift. I had spent the evening at my parents' house and didn't head home until around midnight. I stopped in town at our 24-hour gas station to get some drinks and chocolate and beef jerky for my dog. As I exit the gas station, I get this feeling that's so strong, I just look around because I knew someone was outside with me. Over to my left, about 20 feet away, is a girl in a really cute little dress with a white horse mask on, just standing there. We stared at each other for a minute before I hopped into my car and quickly pulled out onto the road, almost hitting a light pole as I belatedly checked my back seat for danger. That was unnerving, but I was home just a few minutes later, giving my dog jerky and eating chocolate and watching TV. All of a sudden, my dog takes off down the hall to the back porch, barking and growling and attacking the window. I run in there, afraid a window's going to get broke again. She broke a window trying to get a coyote once already, and I stop in my tracks. There, standing at the window, is a horse mask. Again, we stare at each other. I looked over to the back door. Was it locked? I couldn't remember. Horse mask looks over at the door. Slowly, I walk over to it. So does horse mask. We both reach for the knob. It was locked. Horse mask looks behind her, and for the first time, I look around my backyard. There's a guy in a horse mask, too. I'm like, okay, this is enough, I'm calling the cops. I got my dog and shut the door to the porch, and went into the living room to get my cell phone. Of course, I left my phone in the car when I carried my stuff in the house, and my car's in my garage. My dark garage. Lacking any other choice, I open the door to the garage and try to open my car door, but I must have locked it, and I didn't have the keys. I crept back into the house. No sign of the dog, no sign of horse mask in the backyard that I could see from the kitchen window. I grabbed my keys and got the phone. I called the sheriff and told them what happened, that I was followed home and alone. They asked if they were still outside. I looked out the windows room by room, nothing, until I got to my front yard. Right out front, there they were, just standing about 100 feet away, holding hands, staring. I honestly was crying at this point to the dispatcher, who assured me someone would be there soon. As I stood there, clearly on the phone, the girl waved. Then they walked hand in hand down my lane out of sight. It took the sheriff 10 minutes to get there. They found nothing. Told me the guy probably sat in a car, and they followed me. Just kids being kids, they said. My dog didn't come out of my bedroom the rest of the night. I sat up listening to silence until my husband got home. A couple weeks later, someone from the sheriff stopped by to follow up. They said they checked the camera at the gas station, but all it shows is the girl walk up to the dumpster and stand there until I left, and then she walks away.